Hello. Thank you so much for joining us for the 2021 Mayor's Arts Grants Information Session. My name is Anzina Marari, and I'm the chair of the Anchorage Municipal Arts Advisory Commission.
And I'm Beth Johnson, and I'm the vice chair.
Great. So today we are going to share with you a brief history of the commission, the purpose of the Mayor's Arts Grants, and some application tips. So the who and what are the Anchorage, who and what is the Anchorage Municipal Arts Advisory Commission? So we are a group of volunteers that have been appointed by the mayor. We are a group of artists, arts administrators, arts advocates who are connected to, passionate about, or working within the arts in Anchorage. Again, we are all volunteers, and we bring a varied perspective on several disciplines and avenues of arts in our community. And we are an advisory commission. So it's important to know that we are not a governing body, nor are we responsible for any type of municipal programming. Our job and our roles are really to advise the mayor and to advise the assembly on all matters concerning the arts within the municipality, and to be the best stewards and advocates for the arts within our community.
And our work is to advocate and support local arts organizations and individual artists, to serve as a resource for artists and the arts organizations in our community, and to work in concert with other municipal entities and programs.
Great. And our vision is pretty broad. It's really to inspire and provoke a legacy of art.
And our commission took a lot of time this last year to review and revisit and revise this vision statement. We wanted to make it more holistic and inclusive. And so you'll see this language in all of our communications and outreach and engagement pieces moving forward. So look for that.
Yeah, and just to wrap up our vision, we really believe in the arts. We believe that arts are integral to a thriving, sustaining, healthy community. And as such, we believe in arts and culture organizations. We believe in artists, and we really want to foster a culture of respect for the arts within the municipality.
So let's get into it. The Mayor's Arts Grants. This is recognition through the awards to nonprofit producers and presenters and community-based arts organizations. We've expanded the disciplines, so now these cover the visual and performing, literary, media, performance, traditional folk arts and crafts, and multidisciplinary and new genre areas. And so this has been expanded in the last 2 years to be more inclusive and reflective of our community and the artists and arts organizations out there. Our commissioners review grant applications and make recommendations to the mayor. We don't make the awards, we make recommendations that go off to the mayor, who then sets the final award determinations. And for instance, last year for 2020, we made about $110,000 in recommendations for the mayor that were awarded to 21 organizations. So what we do serve, or what the arts grants do benefit, are organizations that serve residents of the municipality of Anchorage and that are physically located here within the Muni. Programming and performances and performers reflecting the rich diversity of our Anchorage audiences, and organizations that can be responsible stewards of the public funds that we're entrusted with recommending for distribution, and that share their arts and programs with our community.
Sure, and this program, the Mayor's Arts Grants, is really focused on 501c3 nonprofit arts and culture organizations. So unfortunately, at this time, we cannot fund public school-based programs.
So this is our spreadsheet, our scoring spreadsheet from last year. And so this reflects a lot of work. So all of the applications that you all sent in go off to be reviewed by each commissioner, and their scoring is compiled into the spreadsheet. And so we wind up with an average score, and then we list out the request amount from each organization, and we make adjustments for instance, the $10,000 cap that was imposed last year because of the money that was available from the municipality for distribution for the grants. And so we take the total combined score and we multiply that by the revised request amount, and that is how we wind up with the initial figure in that next to the last column for what the award recommendation should be. And then if there's an overage, for instance, what was listed was more than the 110,000 or so that we had to distribute, then we have to go and incrementally move that down so we get to the targeted amount, which was 110,000 last year. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later.
Great, thank you, Beth. Okay, so what's new? There's a lot of new things going on in the world right now, and that is no different to the Mayor's Arts Grants application. So the first thing we want to address is COVID-19. We are all operating in uncertain times and unpredictable outcomes. And so we understand that your organizations, your operations, and your programming have been significantly impacted by the current pandemic. We know that these impacts have affected your reporting and programming for 2020. So for those of you who were awarded grants in 2020, we are aware and understand that your reporting is going to be impacted by the pandemic, and that this is to shift and change how you would normally report on your programs and operations as you're predicting and looking forward into 2021. We really want to encourage you to report and predict as best as you can as you move through the application, and know that we are mindful to the impacts and the adjustments that are going to be needed to need to be made through COVID-19. You can always reach out to us if you have questions or are unsure how to respond to a different element in the application. But all commissioners are mindful and sensitive about the impacts of COVID-19 on your particular organizations. We also want to encourage you to think about ways to maintain, adjust, innovate, or adapt your programming to be able to operate through current times. And so when you're thinking about the next season, the next year of your work, to really look at ways that you can continue and maintain operations and programming.
Right. And just echoing what Enzina was saying, this is a chance to talk about new models of delivery or communications and engagement projects. We know that your models have changed likely this year. And so talking about what that looks like for each of you, for your organizations, how you came to that, to these new ways, what the response has been, if you have that data available yet. And so just like you would report out on your regular activities, like she said, we know that things are changing or have changed. And so we just want to know what you've done to adapt and how that's working for you.
Great. The second new element that we wanted to discuss was in regard to funding. And so the first part of this is not new. This is something that we introduced last year. It is something that we are maintaining this year and for the foreseeable future. And that is a grant cap of $10,000. And that is going to be implemented again. What this means is that regardless of the amount you ask, it will be decreased or stopped at $10,000. The reason we've done this is to be mindful of the budget that we've had over the last several years. We've seen the budget for Mayor's Arts Grants be decreased. We are anticipating about the same amount of funding this year that we got last year, which is just around $100,000. Should this amount increase in the future, in the next few years, if we see it go from 100 to 200 to 500, of course, we will revisit that grant cap. But right now, for a level playing field, for equity across the board, and to really mirror what those funding amounts and award amounts look like, we've set that cap at $10,000. You will, in the application itself, there isn't a limit of what you can ask for. So an organization may ask for 25,000, but they should know that that ask will be capped at 10,000. And then depending on the percentage of, depending on their final score, and then how that impacts the percentage of their asset they're being allocated, it will be based off of that $10,000. So we encourage you to keep that in mind in terms of expectations of funding. The other piece that we wanted to introduce, and this reflects back to our vision and our value system as a commission, and that's in supporting arts as a whole within the municipality. Up to this point, we've only been able to support arts and culture organizations, and we really want to be able to be a platform to provide support to artists working within our communities as well. And so this year we will be recommending to the mayor that we set aside 10% of the overall mayor's arts grants budgets to support individual artist mini grants. This is something that will grow over time and will give the commission flexibility in supporting the multiple facets of arts within our community. It's important to note that this 10% will not significantly impact the award amount that you will receive. This is not something that's coming off of each grant or each organization. It's coming off of the top. And so the impact in your award will be nominal. And then finally, again, we want to remind folks that we are no longer requiring organizations to present their application during the application season. This is part of our strategy to be equitable and to remove any type of unaware, unintended bias that someone might have towards an organization. And so in lieu of high pressure presentations during the application season, we will be working with artists and arts and culture organizations throughout the year to provide presentations during our normal commission meetings. And Beth will talk about that in a moment. And this is why it's even more important to be very thorough and complete in your responses in the application. And we'll talk about some strategies and tips for successful grant writing in a moment. But it's important to think about representing your organization in the best way possible. The commission is made of a variety of artists or arts administrators or those working within the arts who have a breadth of experience, whether it comes to visual arts, literary arts, performing arts, etc. But they might not be familiar with your specific organization. They might not know the ins and outs. They might not know the details. They might not be aware of your organization at all. And your application is your opportunity to present yourselves in the best way possible.
That's right. And so again, this was a component in the past where folks would come and present. And what we decided to do was to move that instead of annually after the applications had been received and scoring had been done, to take that component out of the grant making process or the application process and to invite that participation throughout the year at our monthly commissioner meetings. And so we've had a couple of guests over the past year that have come to talk to us on different topics about their organizations and different initiatives. And we hope to increase that. And so look for those invitations. We look forward to inviting and welcoming even more of you to come visit with us in our monthly meetings, either virtually as we move through COVID, and then hopefully once we're back meeting in person. So we'll look for you there.
Thank you, Beth. And then finally, we're really hopeful that we will be able to maintain the schedule of recommendations and award notification. This is currently on our calendar to make recommendations on award amounts to the mayor in March. And this will result in an award notification to the organizations in spring. Again, this is our plan. This is on our schedule. This is our timeline. We are living in uncertain times. And so we ask for patience. Should something occur that delay this timeline for us, we will be transparent and open and communicate with you if there are any delays, but we are currently operating towards recommendations in March and award notification in spring. We are also committed, again, we've talked about really being advocates and stewards for the arts and culture sector in Anchorage. And we just want to reiterate that, you know, we are representing the best interests of the municipality, but we are also committed to serving the Anchorage arts community. And so we want to hear from you. We want you to come present to us at our commission meetings, and we want to be able to provide advocacy on your behalf. Okay, so application tips. These are what I call the 5 C's of grant writing. And that is to make sure that the writing components of your application are clear, concise, consistent, compelling, and complete, right? So clear what you're writing, it makes sense, it's easy to understand, it's not using complicated jargon or language that and points that are difficult. It is concise. We try to encourage that by giving word limits, but how can you communicate your idea in the most succinct way that reiterates that clarity, that the message you're sending, the message you're telling is consistent in all areas and components of the application, that you're expressing why your organization matters, why it's important to the community, why should us as commissioners reading about your organization, how can we understand why this is important, and how is the work that you're doing important? And then finally, that your application is complete. So as a whole, your application is complete, but each individual component is complete as well. And this will significantly impact how your application is scored, and thus result in the distribution of funds allocated to your application and to your organization. It's also important to note that we do not accept incomplete applications. So if your application is missing vital components, it will not be competitive and will not make it through past the first stage screening. So let's look at those 5 C's in context. I have taken out one element. There are 4 different proposal elements that we'll talk about briefly. One of those is in the program narrative section, and that is the administration and organization section of the application. And this is where you describe the governing board, the administrating body of your organization, how the organization functions in terms of leadership and staff, and what the growth plans and opportunities are. So this is an excerpt of the application exactly. And what we want organizations to think about in terms of the concise, consistent, compelling, clear, and complete components is that those are applied to each prompt. We've included these prompts because this is what the commissioners will be looking for in terms of complete answers and to provide scoring to, right? So describe how the governing board is engaged, meets regularly, reflects the community served, sets organizational policies, and participates in fundraising/giving. A commissioner is going to be looking at this question and segment in terms of how the organization responded to these questions and how complete their answers were. If elements of that were missed or not responded to or ignored, it will result in a lesser complete answer, which will result in lesser points and an overall lower score. And so what does that look like in terms of scoring? We might go back and forth a little bit here. So again, there are 4 major components to the proposal. There is the organizational history, the proposed annual activities and calendar. And again, we know this is going to be significantly impacted by COVID. We ask you to do the best and predict the best you can. The narrative element that has 5 sections, and program impact. Those are the 4 main elements that commissioners will be looking at to understand, to learn about your organization, and also how complete you've responded to those sections. So for instance, if in administration and organization, which is part of that application narrative, right? If we look at scoring 0 through 5, 0 being does not answer the question has been left blank. 1 is an incomplete answer. Maybe the question was started or there's not enough content for it to really make sense or be clear for understanding. Maybe the answer is complete, but there's very minimal details, adequate, ample, exceeds, etc. So if we go back to that administration and organization section, keeping in mind the scoring system of completeness from 0 through 5, we can start to see how the commissioners look at scoring these applications. So if this section of this element of this section describe the organization's leadership in terms of experience and innovative and creative programming, if an organization left this blank, it would not be a complete answer. It would be scored lower, which would impact the overall application score for the organization, right? So really thinking of how can I apply those 5 C's, clear, concise, consistent, compelling, and complete, to each element in the proposal is going to help create a successful application. The other strategy and methodology that the Commission uses for scoring is a weighted approach. And this is based on the value of each section as identified by the Commission's vision and the value of the community. And so some elements have a higher rank. For instance, programmatic detail, which is where the Commission really learns about who you are as an organization. That is a very important question for the Commission, so they can get a broad understanding of your organization. That has a higher rank. So what would happen is the overall score in programmatic detail, if that's a 3, for adequate details, that's multiplied by its value at 5, which would give the overall score for that section. And then all of those overall scores are added to create the total application. And then Beth can talk a little bit about how that overall score results in your overall funding recommendation.
Right. So this will repeat a little bit of what Enzina has said, but just at a higher level, this process is a little bit different than it was 2 years ago. The Commission last 18 months ago or so revamped the application itself and the process. And the idea was to streamline the process for applicants, to reduce the subjectivity for the commissioners in scoring, and also to increase the transparency in the scoring and recommendations for funding process. And so these different, the proposal elements and the scoring and the weighting all reflect that kind of thoughtfulness in how we revamped the system. And so if you do leave out a section, we're not looking at the content, we're not looking at the quality of the content of what you write, it's the quality of your programming, but we're looking at the completeness of your answer, talking about the quality of your programming. And so just like she was saying, in any sort of incomplete areas of your answers are going to affect scoring. And so the scoring goes towards the overall average score and then multiplied times the request amount. And that's what the initial recommendation is for funding. And so we want you to be careful in being concise and complete, those 5 C's, and also to remember with any online grant proposal system to create your narrative in a Word document offline and to cut and paste your info so that in the event of any sort of tech hiccups, you don't lose any of your work. There was an earthquake a few years ago that some people lost their work in, and sometimes systems glitch either on the user end or the receiving end. And so we just want to make sure that people are creating their work in an offline area where it's, you can go in and make edits, and then you're just, once it's all done and compiled, you can be uploading that. And so, and as you're creating, to just be reflective of those 5 C's, because it does affect scoring. So.
And the bottom line is really to be mindful and responsive to each element in the application. We've included this in the application because this is what we want to know. And so we're really encouraging you to thoroughly respond to each element that we've put in the application so we could get a better understanding of who you are as an organization and have that be reflected in the scoring.
And we'll share some contact information at the end too, so that you can be reaching out if you have questions that aren't answered here or in the live Q&A session. You can reach out to us that way.
Great. So Beth, take us home and talk about some important dates.
Yeah, here's the good stuff. The grant deadline has been moved to December 21st. That's at 5 o'clock. And so again, making sure that you're not just getting started on the 21st, compiling things and then submitting at 4 o'clock. We'd encourage everyone, earlier is better. We recognize everyone has huge workloads and lots of competing projects and deadlines, but earlier is better. And so as soon as that deadline closes at 5 o'clock on the 21st, then the mayor's staff will go into compiling mode and getting those all together for commissioner review. It's a two-step process. And so in January, a smaller group subcommittee will get those initial applications to go through for completeness. And that's just a first pass to make sure that all the attachments that we need are there and that things are complete and can go on for actual review by the commissioners. And so that's where we make sure that everything that we need to see is there. And you're also helped by that in the application section by section of what you need to attach. And so just pay careful and close attention to that as you go. And then in February, that's when we get the full set of applications to all the commissioners for review, going through that scoring metric that we referenced. And by the final week of February, we're collecting all of those scores and inputting them back in a smaller committee group and compiling and averaging them, looking at the requested funding amounts, and then doing the calculations from scores multiplied by the request amount and getting that score to see where we wind up as far as how close to the target we are of what we have to recommend for distribution, and then making those adjustments so that by the first week of March, on March 2nd, which is a Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m., that's our regular standing commission meeting. That's when you're all welcome to come and see how everyone did, what the scores look like, what the funding recommendation amounts look like. And there's also a Q&A session there as well. And so we had a really great participation last year. That was in person. This year it will be via Teams virtually online. And so we invite you all to attend that. And again, there'll be a Q&A session there as well. And then the following week, we send the recommendations, the final recommendations from the commission off to the mayor for him to go ahead and for the mayor to go ahead and make those determinations. And then award notification will follow later in the spring with grant contracts and payments going out later, a little bit later in the year.
Great, thank you, Beth. So with that, that is our brief overview of the commission, the Mayor's Arts Grants, and a little bit of information on how to write a successful application.
Yeah, and so this is our list of current commissioners. There are 8 of us right now, and we are really looking forward to reading more about your great organizations and how you're weathering these difficult times and what you're still doing to engage your audiences and putting wonderful art out there into our community. And so as you go through this application process, feel free to reach out. You can look for information on our landing page on the commission's landing page at muni.org. You can look at any updates that we post on our Facebook and Instagram channels. And also you can reach out to us via email at anchorageartscommission.gmail.com. And keep in mind that we are a volunteer commission. And so we're looking at that as regularly as we can before the application deadline. But know that it might not be within an hour or two. It might be a little bit longer delayed because we're all volunteers. So with that, I'll send it back to Enzina.
Yeah, and we just want to reiterate, we know that This has been an unpredictable almost year now that we've all been living and operating through COVID-19. And we just want to express our deep gratitude and in honest of the way that you all have been able to really quickly, without preparation or instruction, change and modify the work that you do to keep Anchorage this vibrant, creative place that it is. So thank you so much on behalf of the Commission for the work that you are doing within our community.
Yeah, happy grant writing, and we'll see you in March.